Folks, welcome to this week's Sunday Catechism. I'm recording this in a place called Scott's Head, which is the northern coast of New South Wales. Absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. I'll probably show you a photo of it actually, or at least put it on the cover. It's Sunday, and we are still on the question of the Sabbath. So, question 60, let me read it to you. How is the Sabbath to be sanctified? The Sabbath is to be sanctified by a holy rest all day long, even from such worldly affairs and recreations that are appropriate on other days. Unless we are doing works of necessity and mercy, we should spend the Sabbath in the public and private worship of God. How is the Sabbath to be sanctified? The Sabbath is to be sanctified by a holy rest all day long, even from such worldly affairs and recreations that are appropriate on other days. Unless we are doing works of necessity and mercy, we should spend the Sabbath in the public and private worship of God. Now, the proofs that he gives from that are, of course, the commandment in Exodus 20, the story in Exodus 16 that you shall do no work in the field. I remember in that regard, my grandfather would not harvest on a Sunday. Not other Christian farmers didn't share the same way. The story in Nehemiah 13 where they were harvesting and gathering grapes, and so it seems my grandfather had a point. Luke 4:16, as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. That's him going to worship. The first day of the week, Acts 20 verse 7, they came together to break bread. Psalm 92 is entitled A Song for the Sabbath Day. Isaiah 66, all flesh shall come to worship me from Sabbath day to Sabbath day. And then the story in Matthew 12, 1 to 13, when they pluck the ears of the corn. In fact, I was reading that last night, and the big principle that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Now let's stick with that and just reflect a little bit more on what Thomas Watson says. So, I love this. Having dressed your bodies, you must dress your souls for hearing the word. As the people of Israel were to wash themselves before the law was delivered to them, so we must wash and cleanse our souls, and that is done by reading, meditation, and prayer. I remember when I was a student, I'd not long been a Christian, and I started going to Buccleuch Free Church. And I lived in a place called Iona Street. And it was about, 20, maybe half an hour's walk from Buccleuch Church. And I would rush up, I'd get out of my bed and I would rush up to Buccleuch Church. And I remember speaking to one of the elders and saying, I really like coming to church on a Sunday evening. I don't get so much out of it in the morning. And it's the same preacher, Mr. Ross, who's a great preacher and everything. So he said, David, what do you do? I said, what do you mean? He said, what do you do on a Saturday night? I said, I'll go out. And what do you do on a Sunday morning? Oh, I get up, have a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, then rush up because I'm usually pretty late. He said, okay, that's the solution. I said, what do you mean? He said, you need to prepare. And I never really thought about it. And I realized he was right. And, I'd start going out on Friday nights, making sure I got a good night's rest on Saturday. I got up on a good time on a Sunday. Instead of reading the newspaper, I read my Bible. I walked at a more leisurely pace. And I found a really, really, really benefit from it. So Watson's thing about dressing your souls for hearing the word, I think, is pretty important. Again, Watson, to do servile work on the Sabbath shows an impious heart and greatly offends God. To do secular work on this day is to follow the devil's plough. It is to debase the soul. God made this day on purpose to raise the heart to heaven, to converse with him, to do angels' works, and to be employed in earthly work is to degrade the soul of its honor. Now, he's not saying that we shouldn't work. In fact, there's a whole section on the importance of work and how good it is. And he's not also saying that we shouldn't do works of necessity and mercy, because that's what the answer talks about as well. But they have to be works of necessity and mercy. I mean, I'm going to be traveling today. I'm going to be traveling down to Scottskirk from here. It'll be a 4-hour drive. I'll leave after preaching here. And I do that because it's a work of necessity and worship and mercy to preach. I wouldn't want to make hard and fast rules about what you can and cannot do on the Sabbath. But I think taking a day off from your secular work, if at all possible, it's the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do. One of the things that, for me personally, I have to try and do is I spend a lot of time, as you might gather, on media and doing things, and that's my work, and I should stay away from that on the Lord's Day, I think. It's a time for relaxing, it's a time for worship, it's a time for being with God's people, it's a time for meditation. I went out this morning and walked along the beach here, and it was just absolutely beautiful, really set me up for the Sabbath. Anyway, speaking of which, I'm going to have to go and get my breakfast and preach a couple of times and enjoy the Lord's Day, and I hope you will do as well. See you next week.